Hello, everyone. Just type a Y if you can hear me. Trent, how are you,
Good mate. How you doing? All right?
mate? No one would listen to my complain, but fortunately, I've got nothing to complain about, mate.
No one listens anyway, mate. But
Uh,
interesting topic tonight, buddy.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to this topic tonight. I think it's a really relevant because I reckon one out of every two people I speak to, this is a big topic, and of course, the topic is drumroll the digital ID.
Mate, I'd have to agree, mate. I've been probably influx the last week, definitely the last week, mate. Very much this week with emails, phone calls, text messages, pulled up in the street. It's definitely at the forefront of everybody's mind at the moment, the digital ID. And I guess that, for myself I think it's probably important that before we sort of dive into too much tonight is just probably hear from everybody what their concerns are around the digital ID, what
Yes.
they're worried about with it, because we have our own perceptions, like all of us have our own individual perceptions. We all come from different places around the country. We've all got different information. We're in different environments. So I think it might be quite good, guys, if you want to, use the chat box there. But if you want to share, I guess, what your concerns are, or your worries, or your fears, or what you believe the digital ID or how the digital ID will impact yourself. And I think that will be able to help us frame up the conversation tonight was to try and,
I
give some
agree.
thought around those concerns, mate. Yeah. So if you'd like
I
to, guys,
agree.
please put into the chat box what the concerns are around that digital ID.
I think it's a great idea. Yeah. Now, while we're waiting for that, yeah, it's interesting. I was saying to someone that in the book of Revelation in the Bible, of course, it talked about a whole world tracking system and that would come in for buying and selling. And there's no question that we're, to my complete amazement in a way, we're living in those times where no question that, we're moving into this digital ID and tracking. And I can understand why people have got concerns. So I think it's going to be good to see how do we navigate and deal with it in the real world.
Mm. Mate, because really at the end of the day, how I view the digital ID is it's really, we've got to remember as well too that we now live in a time of technology. So it's like it's a bit of a double-edged sword. It's also progressive, but at the same time, and of course, absolutely, there's the fear of the government overreach, the control, access to the accounts and all the rest of it. But we are evolving, we are moving forward, and really how I look at it, mate, is that the digital ID to me is just a digital strawman is really what it is. And I think there's some ways that people can be wiser about it. And I think all of it comes back to again, mate, to own nothing but control everything and try and minimize as much as you can with it. But the reality is, guys, I think that the truth of the matter is I'm well aware of what the problem is, like well aware of what the problem is, but for anyone to think that we've ever been free, like I mean, we're still a bunch of convicts at the end of the day here, right? We're not really free. I've always used a bit of an expression was that some people can see the bars and they know that they're locked in, and other people just can't see the bars and they think that they're free. But the truth of the matter is that there's already massive government overreach. There's already been massive overreach in that sense. We do have our faces, we do have our ID, Apple IDs, driver's license, passports, bank accounts. It's already pretty well locked in. So man, I think that I'd probably like to steer, as the conversation goes tonight and address some of these concerns by people. But
Mm,
I don't think
that's
it's any
really,
different. Just try and operate out of it as much as you can and use it to your advantage when you want to use it. Because
oh,
people want freedom. For me, freedom is traveling the world, period. That's what my freedom is. And do I think it's going to be possible to do that if I don't have a digital ID? I think it's going to be impossible, mate. I just come through Sydney Airport today, and there's huge upgrades in the airport. It reminded me of being in Europe a couple of months ago, and it's all face recognition as you go through now. All the scans, like things are moving extremely quick. But I think we've got to be mindful too, was that we don't get caught up in the old divide and conquer is another big one. When we get people discussing it, unsure about it, we're really giving our energy away. We're kind of feeding the beast as well too, mate. But yeah, man, I think it's important to encourage people to use it as minimal as possible, just like that's just like they should be with their strawman at the moment.
mate. You just made one of the greatest comments I've ever heard you say. Own nothing, control everything. You flip the great reset on its head, you know. Own nothing and be happy, but you're saying own nothing and control everything, which is kind of you've stolen my asset protection mantra, Trent, but you've improved it. It's a great speech. It's really good. Own nothing and control everything, because that's really I think actually of the story of Joseph in the Bible where he ended up being in a time of famine in Egypt, where the whole world had gone into a great global famine and a great global crisis, and he ended up creating a system and a way to help people get through it. And I think that I like what you were saying there, and I'm going to read the comments in a minute from everyone, but I agree. I think that Jordan Peterson talks a lot about radical acceptance,
Yeah.
and the best thing you can do is, if that was the time to push back against this was like 20 years ago, that was the time to stop
Right.
this. Australia, we chose to be convicts. We chose to focus on acquiring property. We chose to focus on getting wealth. We chose to focus on that's all fine. I'm not condemning it. I've enjoyed it. And now we're dealing with the inevitable consequences of deciding that it was easier not to push back and easier just to get on with our life, enjoy our morning coffees, enjoy our stuff. And it's don't feel bad about it. We just accept that there's a consequence for choice. It's like if you cheat on your partner and then they never want, and then your ex doesn't want to talk to you again, and you might be sorry about it, genuinely sorry, and moving forward with your life. That doesn't mean you can now turn around and say to your ex, "Well, now you've got to like me because I'm sorry about it." They might say, "Well, no, I forgive you, but I want nothing to do with you." And so, the way I see it is, we've chosen to just be a fairly passive country where we have enjoyed our kind of comfort, so to speak. And history shows that whenever countries do that, this happens. What we do have an opportunity to do now is to stop it getting any worse. And we can at least start to, I like what you're saying, to find a way to work within the system, in the background, rise up in consciousness, stop it getting any worse, and eventually take over the system. I mean, I see there's potential opportunities where we might end up taking over the system. So we just got to see the opportunities in the crisis. That's all what's happening. That's one of my things. It's a bit
Oh,
like when I visit Europe. I don't want to get if Europe requires me to have facial recognition. Well, my choice is either not visit Europe or just do it and just go along with it, and learn to work
yeah.
within the system.
I think it's a bit of a challenge as well, too, and again, we all have our own journeys. We're all on our own different journeys, but I can speak for myself and yourself, mate, that we've seen this system. I've been aware of this system for 30 odd years. I know that you have as well too, mate. And I think the challenge that we have at the moment is that so many people woke up, which is an absolute incredible thing during COVID. So many people woke up, but there's still a lot of people that are angry. And anger is a very, very, very low vibration, which is only going to bring more dramas into your life as well, too. Now, it's like when things happen to us, sometimes we just have to understand it, accept it. Um, I don't know if forgiveness is the right word to utilize with it, but we just got to get around it and we just can't get caught in our emotions. We've got to make sure that we be logical around about this because it's a great, it sounds great in theory just to exclude yourself from the system, not move forward with what's happening, go live out in the hills and the rest of it. And if that's somebody's cup of tea, then great. But I still think a lot of Australians would struggle with that because the truth is, Australians do like the champagne lifestyle, mate. They really do. We love the weather. We love being out. We love the socializing. We love events. We love gatherings. We love sporting things. We love festivals. I think you just got to weigh it up a little bit and just be aware that exactly what you're saying, mate. This has been coming for a long time. And I think some people feel like this is like the worst moment in history. You're a walking encyclopedia, mate, and there's been many, many, many terrible things that have happened throughout history. And when I kind of look at where we are at the moment, and again, don't anyone think that I'm praising this scenario in any way, shape, or form. I'm putting logic and reality behind it as well, too, is that it isn't as bad as what things have been before, and we've made our way through those. We've come back to good. Moz, that I'm a big believer that it's God versus the government, and I think that we've just given the government too many rights, too many rules. We let them dictate us. We've had the she'll be right attitude for way too long, and we've been so focused on materialistics, consumerism, capitalism, everything outside of us that people just do not do the inner work any longer. And for myself, the digital ID. I'm not a fan of it by any means, but I can also understand the polarity to it. And that is that we're moving forward into the technological age. So of course we're going to have these little bits and pieces like this come together. And the truth is, like house deeds are all digital now as well too. Everything's about to be tokenized through crypto and blockchain, so everything's going to be digital. It's just a matter of the times that we're in. And I think the greatest thing that any one of us can do is to, again, focus on our inner work and focus on our consciousness and not get caught up because it's really when you got the elites that pull the strings, as was the number one thing is just to divide people. And I can see these conversations going on for the next 3 years, mate, in all honesty. And in these next 3 years, there's no better time to be raising your consciousness. I think I touched on that a little bit last week. And I think I used some example like there was a sale, like a Boxing Day sale or something at a store. That's exactly where we are at the moment. There's huge opportunities for us to evolve consciously, but if we get caught into those lower vibrations, we get distracted, we give our energy to places where we might not actually have control of that, then we're going to miss the real opportunity. And that's really, again, coming back to the Great Awakening. And I think it's important as well for people, if they're not people of faith, then it's really important to find faith right now, like really important. Do I truly believe that man's going to rule this world? No, not at all. I'm a big believer that God's got this under control. I truly believe that the golden age is going to be here about 2032 is when I think it'll be around about that time. So I think there's some great things ahead of us, but we don't want to lose ourselves along the way. And we've got to remember that what we're chasing, sometimes we can lose that because we resist and we fight too hard against it. So as Neo does, right? Outsmart the matrix, but work within the matrix. And I think that's probably going to be a big topic as we discussed tonight, around about don't have anything in your own name. That's a great place to start. Keep things out of your own name because a lot of
Yeah.
people have fear about losing their wealth. Banks taking money, governments taking properties, houses, things like that. Don't have it in your own name, and then you don't own it. It's such a simple, logical move to do. And obviously, you've been doing that for 30 years, mate. I know that's the backbone to everything which you do at GWC. So it's definitely a time that if people haven't made those moves to position themselves correctly, because it's a chess game at the end of the day, right? You've got to play the game. Life's a game. Truth of the matter is, none of us actually really chose to be here, right? We're all here. We're all here. We're all in the game. So we've got to play the game. Don't let the game play you, but play the game.
Yeah, well, I'll read out the comments, Trent, for you. Then we can comment and see what the theme is. So I want to read them out. I'll be the scribe. So Bell says, concerned is the pathway to CBDCs and ultimately full control of our life. Roger says, concerned about control over everything. Vanessa says it gives the government control over personal data and information of choices. Someone else, overreach and control. Kate, tracking and control. Delimitation. Antonella, the lack of clear legislation and position and direction. The technology is moving faster than archaic policy. Good comment by Sylvia. She goes, how does digital ID affect medical choices is concern of mine, which I like. Sue says control data breaches. Sally says control and lack of autonomy and a move towards a social credit system and personal data sharing. All really good. Rob, I don't want to be targeted or judged due to what my interests or what I look like. It's bad enough dealing with a government ID. Then Bell also says, concerned that when a new pandemic is conjured, we'll be forced to be vaxxed or bank accounts and life will be frozen. That's a fantastic concern. I am very much in agreement with that one. M and K, if they decide you have travelled too much, you won't be travelling anywhere. Then Michelle, we have already experienced a government overreach, and there'll be more. Bell again, I didn't know there were globalists with sinister agendas, medical treatment, equipment repair. Antonella talks about the 21st century and about fixing with an archaic mentality. Bell again, Bell, you're certainly engaged. I'm pleased about that. It's good to have someone who's got plenty to say and give some good input. How does a house not being in our own name stop the government or First Nation people taking the property? Yeah, well, this is all really good stuff and things like that and things like that. Matthias, basically, you guys don't have an answer and are communicating with people, just accept and justify why we should gaslight into accepting it by the sounds of it. You can piss off Matthias. That's a stupid comment and I'm not interested in it. Anyone who's got sensible comments, let's answer them, Trent.
Mate, I think one of those ones, there's a lot of things there and they're all 100% valid. For myself, I was aware of CBDCs were going to come in about 15 years ago. So one thing that I've done is made sure that I position myself with other forms of currency, so other cryptocurrencies. In particular, crypto is the way that I sort of operate my structures. So having things outside of a CBDC, so you've got a second option. Even traveling, I heard somebody talk about traveling. Well, I can tell you right now, and I know it might not be logical for everybody at the moment, but it's very different when you take private charters versus taking commercial. Like very, very, very different how you can travel around as well too. What were some other things that you said? Some of the stuff around lockdowns and things like that. I think that the digital ID and the CBDCs will play a big part in a future lockdown because I believe there's definitely another lockdown. One or two of those are coming. Absolutely. Like absolutely.
Yes.
I think that the way we'll probably look this time though is I don't think you'll be able to keep people in the houses anymore. I think Australia's woken up enough to know that they won't play that game. But how I could see it being is I could see it being that, Mr. Trent Chapman's currency, which would be a CBDC, if I was in the mainstream system with that, then I may only be able to use that in like the Byron Shire as an example. So like my local jurisdiction. So I can definitely see where it can go to it. I think it's more around about with the digital ID. It's where it could go and where it's looking
Yep.
like it'll go is more of the concern. I don't think it's so much as an immediate concern at the forefront because I think it still takes some time. It's a big play. I forget who made that comment that you read out there before as well too, Wazza, but it's oh, sorry, I've just lost my train of thought there. Oh, sorry. When I was talking around, somebody had spoken around about, the global agenda and the rest of it. Like, if people aren't aware of it yet by now, but this is a holy war that is happening. It's a holy war that's happening. The people that are pulling the strings are not on the right side of the holy war. They are absolutely driving that. So the only way that we can really push back is that we have to push back spiritually. And I know that might sound like woo-woo to people, Trent from Byron, woo woo woo. It's the truth. You've got to gain control of yourself. You've got to gain control of your emotions. You've got to learn how to dictate your
Yeah.
energy. You've got to make sure you don't have your energy blocked. You've got to rise above the fear of it, and you've got to be smart around about it. Now is a time to be very, very, very smart. And you've got to pick your battles a bit too, right? It's a little bit like you've got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them as well. And I think probably the people that are most concerned around about the digital ID are probably people that, don't have their assets in trusts and have their things in structures. Maybe people that haven't, got other forms of currency, like other different forms of cryptocurrency, or have the knowledge of how to be able to utilize that and how to do that as well too. I think a lot of the fear will come from those that probably haven't been proactive enough. I know, mate, for yourself, you've been banging on this hard for 2 or 3 years, to the point that my ears nearly bleed, mate. You've been banging on so hard about it, but you've been absolutely correct that you've got to be prepared for things and we have to be prepared for the worst in every way, shape, or form. For anybody that's not aware, I think most people are, but if anyone's not aware that the strawman concept is, Mr. Trent Chapman. So it'd be like your birth certificate scenario, right? And, I've had many people over the years. I went down this avenue 15 years ago about beating it, overthrowing it, writing your own birth certificates and the rest of it. But you've just got to realize that this whole game is corrupt. The courts are corrupt as well, too. Like everything's corrupt. So one thing that you can do, and one thing which is a very wise thing to do, is just make sure that Mr. Trent Chapman doesn't actually own anything. The Trent Chapman Trust can own things, but keeping things out of your own name will be a big game changer. It also works in a sense as well too of, if you have a mobile phone as an example, like this mobile phone isn't in Mr. Trent Chapman's name in any way, shape, or form. This is in a different entity's phone, an entity which I control. So it doesn't really concern me in that sense. The same as my vehicle, the same deal. It's not in my name, it's in a different entity as well, too, right? Same as properties, investments, different entities as well, too. You've really got to detach yourself from the things that you care about, and that can be hard for people because a lot of people have that thing that they want to own it. It's still greed. It's still a low vibration in every way, shape, or form. But I think that's a big play, and I think a lot of the CBDCs as well. For those that were here last week, would have seen how I explained the Great Awakening versus the Great Reset. So the middle class is, being wiped out, and we're all aware of that. The last 5 years in particular, we've all seen that. So people that aren't proactive and move with technology, people that aren't, making money online as an example, that don't have digital platforms, haven't found ways to move with it, well, they might find themselves out of work, very, very soon. And if they're out of work, then yeah, a universal income is probably going to have to be the only option that you do have to move forward, right? So you're sort of forced into it. I've been banging on this for a few years now, was around about if you want to be sovereign, if you want to be free in the spirit, you want to be free in your own movement, your own freedoms, then you've got to take action, but you've got to move with the technology where we are at the moment as well, too. You've got to be an entrepreneur. Like it's only going to be the entrepreneurs that move forward. And everybody's got so many gifts, was. Everybody is so intelligent with so many gifts and so many things that they can share to the world. And as we identified last week, mate, there's many problems in the world right now that many of us can solve. And we've got to make sure that we do this on our individual level, but we've also got to make sure that we move as a collective as well too. We can't have any deadwood around this space, and COVID, you heard me say this in sort of in private when we would speak around about in COVID, was it? But I tell you what, I'm not endorsing COVID in any way, shape, or form, but it really highlighted to me how many gooses that we also have within the country as well too that don't just that don't that I guess what I'm trying to say is that sometimes that we've got to filter out some dust to be able to move forward as well too. And sometimes those things are just some of our old habits. Some of those are our old ways of thinking as well too. Like we've got to think different. We're in a new world now. We're in a new earth. We have to think different with all of this. And I cannot encourage people enough, I don't know if encourage is the right word, but I cannot highlight enough that this is an absolute spiritual war, like absolutely. So to be able to put up a fight in this, we have to do it in spirit. And otherwise we can feed the beast. I think we discussed this last week, was a lot around about protesting and things like that. I love people that, with high moral compasses that stand for what they're about. Absolutely. But again, it's not a physical war. It's something which is in the spirit. And we've really got to come together, around that space. I guess don't feed the fear. Find the faith, find the faith. Simplify your life. Think about what does serve you. It's a great time to lose any old habits, to break away from things that don't serve, maybe the people that were around. There's never been a better time to, dive into entrepreneurship and have a look at that. There's so many different things out there at the moment, digital nomad visas, all these other things that can also assist us within that freedom. But I really, really, really do struggle, Wazza, to think of around about a solution to be able to move forward with anyone's life without a digital ID. I'm stuck on it, Wazza. I really am. Unless you just isolate yourself from it, I really don't know the solution to that, mate.
Well, all I can say is that as you were speaking some great wisdom, I was just writing down furiously just a few points I want to run through and follow on. You just made some great points. So I'm just going to make a few comments and share some slides over the next 5 minutes. Because yeah, no, I love your honesty. I actually agree with you, and I think it's like sometimes, let's just say that I know that let's say that I'm your doctor, Trent, and I've realized you got a severe illness and cancer. And imagine that I watered it down for you, pretended everything was fine. You wouldn't like me for it, You would. Whereas if I told you the truth, you got a chance to get your affairs in order and possibly take action and heal yourself. And so sometimes you've got to face an ugly truth about things. So I'm just going to make a few general comments, and then I'm going to show a few quick slides that I wanted to follow on from what you said. So I've written a few notes here. One of them was the ugly truth scenario, which I mentioned. Yeah, and when you said about pick your battles, basically, I think it's a really good metaphor, because imagine if you and I discovered, Trent, that Tyson Fury wanted to beat the shit out of us, okay? And imagine that I said to you, I'm going to fucking take this guy on and beat him. You go, oh, shit, well, you're about to get slaughtered, dude. And whereas imagine if I knew that Tyson Fury was willing to make a deal with me, and I said, no, screw it, I can beat him. You'd think, well, you're an absolute clown, man. So in other words, you got to pick your battles. And there was a time when we could push back against the system. There was a time over 20 years ago where when people spoke out about things, governments had no choice but to listen. There was a time. I remember in the 1980s when people pushed back against the Australia card, and that made a difference. The churches would push back against things. I remember 20 years ago, I was doing activist workshops along with various other people all around the country about this stuff. And we warn people. And this is not to in any way put myself on a pedestal, because there were people doing it. And honestly, I hit a point when I realized, I can remember 2015, I did a webinar on this with Stephen Pettit. We talked about preparing now for what was coming. And most people used to say to us, you guys are a bit extreme. I had people tell me that. And to be
Well, it's the
honest, it
she'll
was,
be right attitude, mate. The good old Aussie she'll
oh,
be right attitude.
I got a point when I got pretty despondent about the whole thing, and I thought, what's the point, you know? And at one stage, I stopped speaking out about things because it didn't really make a lot of difference as I saw it. COVID, in a way, changed and helped people to see things now. But the reality is, where we're at now is different now. We had our chance to push back and we didn't take it. And right now, it's like, if you push back right now, if you go up and speak out and take on the system, there's a very good chance you're going to lose all your money. There's a very good chance you're going to become a political prisoner and suffer severe consequences. So you've got to, number one, be ready for that. And that's one path you can do
And
it. But
lose
just,
mind and lose your mind too, was it? I've seen it
yeah, no,
happen.
100%.
Unfortunately,
It's,
too many
and
people.
just, we would be unwise to tell you, like, stand up and be sovereign and fight back, because the reality is, for most people, you'll be casualty of war because you're fighting a beast that is well and truly entrenched. The people have chosen the beast to be here in the elections. Let it sink in. Unfortunately, you've been influenced by the dumb vote. The minority have chosen the protest, not the majority. And as Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin said many, many years ago, they said, if you keep letting governments overreach, because governments have been trying to steal money since the Crusades and before. I mean, the Crusades, that was what the governments were doing. And then they were trying to steal oil 30 years ago. That was why they invaded Iran. I mean, governments are criminal organizations by and large who do this kind of shit. Now, does that mean we don't need government? No, I think we do need government in a big society because we have such a lawless kind of, when you have a big community of people, by and large, people will be lawless without some kind of governing, just because of human nature. So we do need some form of government to regulate life, liberty, and property. So someone can't just walk in and take your car off you, or can't just walk in and kind of beat the shit out of you and say, oh, well, sorry about that, or kill someone, Ukrainian refugees on trains in America and stuff like that. You know, you need governments to say, you know, you don't do that kind of shit, or no, you don't rape women. That's bad. You're going to get punished if you rape women. So we need governments to kind of set those limits, but we've kind of let the creation become the creator. You know, we have turned away from the moral law, which has governed society since time fucking immemorial, excuse the French. And this is why Lord Blackstone, one of the great common law teachers, warned, and he said, woe to the people whose governments declare martial law in times of peace, remove their liberty, just like what fucking happened during COVID, excuse the French. It happened, and we let it happen. And this is the actual understanding of our ancestors, and this is why blood was shed in the Dark Ages. This is why Martin Luther put his life at risk to nail the treatise of 95 pages challenging the authority of the Catholic Church to put people on barbecues just because they were herbalists or witches. And in today's world, many of you who go to your New Age things and your herbalist stuff, you would be on barbecues 500 years ago. The reason that you're not is because people said, fuck you, you fucking pieces of turd-faced shit. We're not going to put up with this stuff. We're not going to be stupid about it. And that's what I liked about Martin Luther. Luther didn't get up there and run a big rebellion and burn everything down. Luther was an intelligent, rich, prosperous priest who went up there and respectfully challenged the laws. They were going to kill him anyway, but fortunately he won the respect of that. And that's what started the Reformation. That's what started things like trial by jury coming in, why we can actually go before that, and we've at least got some rights, like the right not to incriminate ourselves, the right of privilege to have lawyers. That was a time in history you didn't have that stuff. Your right to a trial was like Russia. You go before a secret tribunal, you would be interviewed, your lawyer would be there as a kind of rubber stamper. They wouldn't be able to say much, and then off you were to the barbecue. And I'm telling you now, in Australia, this happens more than you realise. There's about 3 government bodies that are allowed to do secret inquisitions where no one, we have a 5-year moratorium where you can't tell a soul about what you've been through. This has been around for the last 5 years especially, but even before, last 3 years, it's been full on. So you can be called in and have a notice, and if you tell any of your friends, you go to jail, okay? This is going on in Australia right now. We have let this happen. And so, and we've got the sovereign individuals, we've got governments here, and we've got corporations, and we've let these fuckers take over and run the show. And we're paying the consequence now. So that's why I was very tough when someone got up and made that, stupid comment like, oh, you guys are gaslighting into that. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to put up with that kind of shit whatsoever, because at the end of the day, now it doesn't mean we sit there. I mean, what people don't know is I've been through all kinds of government prices for what I'm doing. I mean, I've had governments up my ass since goodness knows when, and I've got them up my ass now. And I just take the best lawyers, I take my stuff and I fight them like no tomorrow. And believe you me, I will do that, because one of the reasons that even though we may not agree with everything he does, I like Trump, is at least Trump, and keep in mind, he did this when he'd been kicked out of government, had 130 million prosecutions against him, and he still fought back and fight. And that's what it's going to take, and not to get up and go, oh, I'm going to go burn Parliament House and do a protest. No, it's like what Martin Luther did. He went up and he says, no, you cannot do this. You can't keep burning people on barbecues and then using the church as a money-making spin. Because what the Catholic Church would do very cleverly in the Dark Ages is like, oh, if Trent Chapman decided he wanted to sin and go and sleep with his neighbour's wife and commit the sin of adultery, which was a criminal offence in that time, they'd go, oh, if you pay the Pope a certain amount of money, then God will give you a license through his servant, the Pope. I mean, it was the biggest scam you'll ever see. And so governments have been doing this shit, and people, and when you're disempowered, governments can do this to you. And it's like, if you're disempowered in a relationship, you'll get scammed like shit from someone until you finally step up and say, well, no, you're not going to do this kind of stuff and treat me as a doormat. And this is what's going to change things. This is what Trent said. I mean, the only thing that's going to change is a mental, moral, spiritual awakening of the people now, of us now, and recognizing the system that we're in. And to some degree, we're bearing the fruit of our doings. We're bearing the fruit of our choices. It's like if I chose, for example, to spend all my money and waste it on, let's say, crazy heroin drug-induced things and blowing it on, on basically crazy wild hookers and wiping out all my funds, I'm sitting there miserable and I'm sorry about what I did. I mean, I'm sure you can be kind to me, but then if I said, oh, it's not fair, I want you to go and give me all my money back in the crowdfunding, you'd be like, well, you're kind of bearing the price for being a bit of a dum-dum. And now you just got to work and rebuild your life again. 15 years ago, my business went broke because I made some really stupid decisions. I should have gone bankrupt and I didn't, because I'd asset protected myself and lived what I preached, fortunately, and I rebuilt myself again and took time, and I did. But then no one came to me and go, hey, well, I'm going to bail you out. No, I literally had to rebuild from scratch. And we've got to recognize where we're at. We're in a severely vulnerable situation as a society because we've made really stupid choices. We chose in COVID to be complete dum-dums. We really did. We chose to sit there and let stuff happen. We chose to allow things to go on. We allowed things to continue to happen. And fortunately, thank God, we woke up. So now what we've got to do is say, okay, let's protect our assets. Let's put our wealth so that if this digital ID comes, because let me tell you one thing, the elite have long done this. When Russia got invaded and all of the poor were left vulnerable, the elite were already out of Russia. They were already in their yachts. Their wealth was long gone from Russia. They were well out. They'd done it. The super wealthy are already out. The people that I meet as clients, they're out. Their money's set up in overseas places. They're ready for this. They know what's happening. They're grieving as much as you are, but they've long made their move because they can see the problem. Whereas generally history has always been the same. The masses, the peasants, the poor, tend to kind of not take action because they think, oh, I can't afford it or whatever. And so the only thing that changes is a spiritual awakening and overcoming the system of the beast. And how you do that is like, at first you've got to embrace the reality of it. Yes, I have a digital ID, yes, but that doesn't define me. I will find a way around it. I will certainly make sure that my wealth and my livelihood's not basically linked to this digital ID. So the government might go, boom, black, yeah, great. Now I'm going to shut that fucker up. And then they're going to, basically do shit with me and then do that, which right now they could do it. I'm sure if they could do it to me, they would, because they've been after me for the last number of years. I've got to be smart about it, and we've all got to be smart because as COVID shows, I don't think we've got a lot of time left. I think that things are slowly becoming more and more vulnerable. And I know I've gone on a bit of a rant just then, but I want to really sink in. My message is hope, but hope does not mean sitting there watching Netflix hoping it will get better. Hope is taking action. And as yes, you are, Christ said in the Bible, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence and the violent take it by force. He's not talking about going and burning down houses. He's saying an inner attitude of strength that says, no, I will not sit here and have my freedoms taken off me. I won't just have this stuff off me. I'm here to, do the right thing. And you can do that in all areas of your life. It's like when one of my kids was being bullied in school, I just said to the school, look, I said, I didn't go there yelling and screaming. I just said, this has got to stop. Or, yeah, I mean, you've got a duty of care, there'll be consequences, and things were stopped very quickly. And unfortunately, in Australia, there are still some limits on government's power. There actually is. We do have some. We have a common law heritage. We have certain rights, which we've got. We've got certain legal processes we have, which Russia doesn't have, or North Korea. So it's actually still workable if we realize that, you know. So again, I'm not saying I endorse what's going on. It's just the reality of where we're at, and I'd rather not be here. But I can say, hand on heart, it's not because I didn't do anything about it myself. And I know, Trent, you did something about it. And this is not saying anything other than let's accept where we are. Let's not sit in denial and whatever else. Then go, okay, now that we're here, how do we move forward? Do I need a plan B? How can I change my life to find meaning within this? And because in all of this, there's opportunity. I mean, who knows? Maybe out of all of this, Trent, you and I and a whole lot of other people could take over the system and bring change. I don't know. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But I think it's possible. You know,
And I would have to
there's so
agree.
many possibilities if we have the right framework and accept where things are at right now.
Mate,
If that makes
absolutely.
sense.
You're spot on with everything you're saying there, was and highly commend. I mean, at the end of the day, you're doing it right now. Like you're taking responsibility, you're being part of the change. Literally, as we speak right now, you are. The revolution that we need, mate, is the evolution of the mind. That's what we need. That's how the revolution will work, is that we need to raise that consciousness. And we've got to be aware that I think we all understand the truth, but there's truth and there's also reality. And reality is the matrix that we currently live in at the moment that we have to work within. And this is always the challenge that people always find, is that when we know the truth, and especially for people that have just woken up recently, like it does make you very angry. As I see it with people all the time, when they start to realize what's really going
I'm
on, they're
mad about
bloody
it.
angry.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
mad about it myself.
Yeah, well, it's a fair call. It's 100%. But what we've got to
Mm.
make sure is we've got to find somewhere within there where it's that the truth and the reality need to be able to work together. Because, mate, they're 10 steps in front of us all. There's no two ways about it. They're 10
Yes.
steps in front of all of us, right? And whilst we get too distracted on certain things, like at the moment, the digital ID will be the next 2, 3 year topic. There's no two ways about it. There'll be people that will resist for a long time. There'll be some people that jump on board. And it's a personal thing. Like if it's I kind of look at it this way, if it was. As you know, I'm a big crypto man. So one thing that I'm very mindful of, and I don't know if people have seen it as of yet or not, but I'm very much aware the last 3 or 4 weeks that the digital ID is already here. It's not coming, it's already here. There's certain things that I've tried to access, and I can't access those things unless I get that digital ID. So it's already here, it's already in front of us. But if we get too caught up and we get too distracted and we keep dividing amongst our people and we don't bring that unity together, well, they're already mapping out that next step. Mate, I think I just always bring everything back to it's all God's design, right? And I find harmony, I find peace in that, I find hope in that as well too. I think we've got to also be very mindful within our own individual mental health, not to create some of our own fear mongering ourselves, and also not to manifest it as well too. I think I've seen a comment that somebody made a remark about that, and it's so accurate. Like it gets in people's minds. If it gets in the collective's minds, then we can literally manifest these things just like COVID. COVID wasn't real, but did it become real? Yeah, it did become real. Why? Because
Yeah, that's really good.
enough people
Absolutely.
believed in it. So we actually manifested it in is exactly what actually happened to it. I think these next couple of years as well, that the one thing that I've been very mindful of, and I've spoken to you a bit about this the last couple of weeks, was we've had a fair few conversations around this. I don't when we talk about wealth, like everybody wants to know about wealth, right? Everybody wants money because they think money is going to be the solution to all their problems. When you find that when you actually have money, it's usually a bigger problem having money than it was when you didn't have money as well, right? But these next couple of years, it is going to be wealth that no one's ever seen before that's up for grabs. The whole system changes. It does go all digital. Everything's new. So we are in a time where we could really capitalize. And maybe, just a maybe thought here is that if I was to resist against a digital ID for the next 2 or 3 years, would I miss those opportunities into crypto and other things which I think are going to make a lot of wealth, that I can make a lot of change in this country, that I can impact the whole country? Yeah, I believe that would be the case. If I dove my energy into this digital ID too much and it became a big sole focus for myself and it was like I was self-absorbed around it, well, where's my personal growth come from there? Where's my opportunities come from there? Where do my new connections with new people come from there as well too? Because at the end of the day, the whole point of the matrix is to take your energy. Bottom line, that's what it's all about, to take your energy. And if we get too caught up in things, then we actually end up giving them our energy, right? We give the system, we give the entity, right? Where we give that evil spirit our energy. And that's what they feed off, is in that scenario there. So again, I don't have a solution, and I wish I did have a solution, but I'm just very much aware that the reality is that it's here. The reality is that at some point everybody's going to face some challenge. They're going to be faced with that digital ID at some point, whether it's getting their crypto, whether it's opening a bank account, whether it's moving some monies, whether it's getting on a plane to travel, whether it's because they need to access NDIS, whether it's because they need to get their self-managed super, whether it is they need to get into a nursing home or whatever it may be. But everybody's going to be faced with that one choice. The one thing that I do feel good about, and I've sat on this, and I spoke to you about this and Grace last week about this was, but I've sat on this and I've manifested, and I've dreamt these things for years, guys. I've dreamt the society that we're going into, that if you don't play part, then you do get pushed out of it. But it is a little bit different to COVID still was. It is a little bit different to COVID. There's nothing being inserted into myself. Nothing's affecting that health unless I let my mental health, go up to shit through that process within there. I very much, I probably don't have too much of a concern on the front side of the digital ID. Where it can go and where the projection is, that's where
Yeah,
I
I know.
have concerns. That's where I
Yeah,
have
the microchipping implant. Yeah, I get you.
that's where I have concerns with all that.
Yeah, yeah,
At the moment, I can't let my mind race to there and start thinking the worst to start with, right? Because you got to deal with that one challenge at a time, work out how you're going
yeah,
to work through it, so then you can then focus on the next thing. Otherwise, you just get absorbed with it, then you miss the whole opportunities. And I think we've got to remember too that, for those that are spiritually inclined will understand exactly what I mean, but Earth is a school for us to come, and it is a place where we do learn. It is a place where we do go through emotions. And it's like a gift almost, mate. Some emotions we don't really like, right? But it's still a gift. We get to feel it, we get to experience it, we get to be a part of it as well, too. So it's a personal thing, mate, but I'll just keep coming back to it, and obviously don't endorse it in any way, shape, or form. But everyone's going to be, and I think everyone's going to be challenged with that question a lot sooner than what they thought as well, too. Like a lot sooner than what they thought. The systems are all in play, and the switch will go very, very, very soon, and it won't happen overnight. But you can see how all these areas, from finance to travel to health, even education, to freedom of speech. Like they're all just about to hit that spearhead. And I've always believed 20 odd years ago that when it hits that spearhead, then that's when the switch will happen. And unfortunately, the system's really good at making you look over here while other things are moving over here. And then once you sort of take your focus over and you look over here and you start looking at this, there's more things happening over here. I don't know if I don't believe that people that would be in lower consciousness, even people that are potentially unconscious, but that are really conscious, I don't know if they could even really comprehend it because it's moving so fast. Everything moves so quick. Like you're getting hit from every bloody angle, like in every way, shape, or form. And I think for myself, when it comes to that digital ID scenario, is that decision that I'll make around about that when I make those decisions, it'll be my choice to do it. I won't wait until a point until I'm forced to do it. I'll either choose to exclude myself from society and I'll go live in the hills with a couple of fellas out in Nimbin, which is highly unlikely that I would do that because I enjoy life, I enjoy connection, I enjoy being around people, I enjoy different cultures, I enjoy helping people, I enjoy being online, talking with people like yourself was. But it would be a bit of a choice where I think COVID was a little bit different. I don't really think people felt like they really had a choice. And whilst it sort of sounds like I'm being a little bit contradicting to it, but there'll be that decision where you have to make that choice, and you'll have to make that choice because you want something. Whether it's you want to access your bank accounts, whether it's because you want to travel, whether it's because you want to start a new business. So don't lose that empowerment either, that sometimes, mate, we've both done this before in business. Even me and you in business have done this before, was it? Where maybe we don't have it exactly the way that we want, but we find that medium ground so we can keep moving forward. And I think that's probably the key to it. You've got to find what sits well with you. Um, I would hate to think of what life would be like for me if I was excluded and I was sitting out in the hills. I would,
oh,
I like parts of the Matrix. I don't endorse it, but I like parts of the Matrix. There are things that I do enjoy with it, and I don't want to lose those things because they do bring me joy in some of those areas. Even just, I was just in Sydney yesterday to catch up with family. It was so convenient for me to jump on a plane here in Byron, be there in an hour, get to hang out with my friends, have a good time, see me, see the family, jump back on a plane, come back home. I was able to do my emails, my work, things that I needed to do on the plane and the rest of it. So yeah, mate, I think. Again, I wish I had an answer for everybody, but I really don't see an answer, and that's just me being brutally honest with that. I can't lie to people. I can't give false hope. I believe that the evolution will happen, and I believe the evolution of the mind will happen, and I do believe that we will have the revolution, and I absolutely do believe the golden age is coming. But I just think we've got a little bit until we get there, and I think we've just got to be smart about how we navigate through that.
I couldn't agree with you more. I like how you're just being truthful. No, I don't think there's an easy solution either. And there's a very good book which I read in my church days called This Present Darkness, and another one called Piercing the Darkness by Frank Peretti. They're fiction novels about spiritual warfare. And I remember when I worked with a great shaman, he said to me, two of the best books you'll ever read on spiritual warfare. It kind of tells you exactly how that realm really, really works in a fiction story. And one of the things that in that story, they were up against a major issue where their church was being persecuted by the government in the second book. And basically, one of the pastors gave an amazing speech on this civil disobedience. And what he said was, he said, yes, there's a time for civil disobedience, but you've also got to ask yourself, are you ready for the fight? And he said, and you've also got to ask, is there still a wiser path to go for now? In other words, is there another way around this for now? Because nobody wants to necessarily be an outcast in society if they can avoid it. There's if you can avoid being an outcast, there wants to be a better way of doing it. Do I like the idea of the digital ID in terms of how it is? No, I do not like it whatsoever. Does that mean I'll completely exclude myself from society? Maybe I will. Who knows? For now, no, I won't. But what it does do is, are there other options where it's a little bit better? So, for example, I go to Bali a lot more, as you know. It's a lot better now. I agree with you. I don't think the answer is obvious. The one thing I do know is that every spiritual teaching and prophetic book I've ever read since I was a boy and when I was in church told me this time was coming. I can
Yeah.
remember in 1988 hearing a great prophet called Barry Smith when I was a young man teach about this, and everything we're seeing now, he told it was coming. And my mum and a lot of my family used to tell me, "You're a wacko. We cannot believe you listened to that guy." And before my mum died 6 months ago, she says to me, "Well, turns out that a lot of what was said was right, hey?" So it took me 37 years to get vindicated, but basically that was told. But what they all said was, it's a chance for one of the greatest spiritual awakenings in human history, they said, because they said people will have no choice but to turn to God or to spirit and to find meaning in life as this happens. And there'll be no choice. Because for me, what keeps me going, I'm actually really good with that. And that's why one of the things in the book of Revelation, it actually says, and let's ignore the religious jargon just for a minute, but it says, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, the word of their testimony, and will live not their life to their death. So let's just put that into plain English. They overcame the system, the beast, which is what they're talking about, by having a strong faith that drove them, by the word of their testimony, speaking out, and they love not their lives for death. In other words, they're willing to give up everything. They realize that earth is so fucking transitory. They're willing to let go of their attachments. They're willing to give it all up. And I can honestly say there was a time during COVID, and I think that's why we hit it off. I remember I was ready to give everything up, and I actually was at peace. And the only reason I got back into speaking like this was a spiritual experience I had a little while ago, some months ago, where I was basically told to come back out of retirement, so to speak, and to start to speak out and to help people. And I kind of didn't really want to do it, to be frank. I'd kind of worked myself out. I was happy to live a simple life and just, in a way, let the world go to hell. So I'm like, I've spoken out. People have no interest in listening. And I'm really hope this is going to come across the right way or way, but you hear my heart, what I'm saying here. I'm not saying it for any big noting. I suffer with I just watch this and I think, for goodness sake, many days I sit here and go, I cannot believe I'm in these times. I would rather live in a much simpler time, but I'm here. And I think that, as you said, Trent, that the secret is that what keeps me going is I've got a faith, I've got a meaning in my life. I'm like, yeah, I don't know how effective what I'm doing will be, but I love what Michael Jordan, the basketball player, used to say. He left everything on the court. left everything on the court. And I want to know that at the end of my days, in the Bhagavad Gita, which was a great Hindu writing and teaching, where Krishna says, he said that to Arjuna, all that matters in your liberation and your journey on earth is that you know that you left it all out there. In other words, you left your blood on the battlefield, so to speak, to do what you knew was right in your own truth. And to me, that's all that matters. And
Yeah.
what happens with your system, there's things outside of me I can't control. I can speak out the best I can. As much as I can, I've managed to somehow miraculously dodge the director's ID myself. I don't have it. I've dodged it so far. I've managed to dodge a lot of things. Does that mean I may have to find a way to go into it? Yeah, possibly. When I go to airports, I get fingerprinted, I get facial recognition like everyone else. I'm kind of like, for now, I'm okay with it because as I see it, I can do it. But I'm very aware there might come a time where I know that by doing that, it's going to leave me vulnerable to get microchipped. So I've got to make sure I've got a plan B for that and a plan C for that. And do I have one? Yeah, I actually do. If it means eventually I'm going to have to pull back more into the mountains or whatever, I trust that it will work out. That's the beauty when you've got a faith, a spiritual belief, because you kind of know that spirit leads you. However you know spirit, whether that's Christ, whether that's Krishna, whether that's the universal consciousness, it doesn't really matter. But when you really trust in spirit, spirit does lead you and you'll find a way through it. And that's been my mantra my whole life. Early on in COVID, I said to people, I'll be fine. I'll find a way through it. I won't get vaccinated and I'm going to be exempted and I won't be wearing masks. All of that happened. I got exempted, one of only 18,000 people to get legally exempted by the government. I got exempted from masks by my doctor. I lived my life perfectly normally because I just said, I don't know how it's going to happen. And the honest truth, I like what you said, Trent. I don't know the answers to a lot of this right now. I'm like you, I don't really know. All I know is that make sure you got your faith. Number one, make sure you're in your community and make sure, for the love of God, you got your assets protected. And have plan Bs because, yes, I do think there's vulnerable, realistic chances that people will lose their money or at least you'll keep your money. But like China, if you don't obey a strict social credit system, you will be excluded from society. I think that's a realistic likelihood, the way we're going in the next 2 years in Australia, bar a very unexpected chain of events.
Mate, absolutely, mate. A couple of things that you just say there too was I just want to go over a few things that you said there, and one thing that I think these type of conversations for me that are honest and truthful always bring out the heart energy, mate. But you're somebody that probably doesn't get commended enough, mate. I don't know anyone that does as much as what you do was the amount of your little free webinars and all the rest of it that you do. And it's almost that it's because it's nearly beyond you, right? You know that's your higher self. You know it's your calling. You know you have to do something, so you actually do it, right? I think a lot of people can draw inspiration from that. If we all do something, then it makes a big change, right? Like it makes a massive change. Now, again, Trent, Byer, and woo woo. If anyone thinks that, then bless you anyway. But if anybody wants to know what they can actually possibly do, what could they actually possibly do? Well, you could start to pray for the country. You could start to pray for the people. You could start to visualize a better world. You could start to manifest a better world as well too, right? You can play a part in giving that spiritual energy. And I think that everybody would know that we're all here to walk each other home is how I look at it was, right? Some of us just put the front foot forward a little bit more than others. And I don't understand what that reason is. Everybody's got their own personal reason as to where it is. But we all do need to come together in this. We don't need to be divided by this. We've got to come together in this. No matter how we look at it, we've got to do it through unity. Otherwise, we're just going to keep getting outsmarted with the old divide and conquer. Like it's oldest book in the trick that still continues to work. So it continues to work. So we've got to come together. And I think that we've all got voices for a reason. Everything we speak was, as you know, we speak it into existence. So I think sometimes we've got to be mindful how much we speak of the negative side of these things as well too, right? Because there is polarity to everything, right? There's always polarity. So, there may be plenty of good things that could come out of this for people as well too, right? I'm still not 100% sure what those good things could be, but I'm aware there's a lot of good opportunities at the moment for wealth. I'm aware that there's a lot of good opportunities at the moment to raise your consciousness as well too. There's plenty of great opportunities to, make new networks now, get a part of new networks. Technology allows us to connect. Like there'll be people from all over Australia and outside of Australia on here right now. You've got, a couple of hundred people on here again was. So there's people everywhere. So we are able to be connected through that. Um, yeah, again, mate, don't know the answer, don't know the solution. I would just always encourage people to raise their consciousness. And I think that goes back to what you were saying about the laws and stuff too, right? I believe that, people in your audience are probably, relatively quite high in their consciousness. So we probably can do without these governments and the rest of it. But the other 50% of people in the country that aren't at that level of consciousness, like some of those examples you gave before, will have complete bloody anarchy as well too. And like yourself, was it through COVID? We made those same decisions and we made those same choices for our own individual reasons. But COVID was probably really good for me, in all honesty. Most people that I grew up with that thought I was batshit crazy like yourself started to realize, oh, there's a bit of truth what he talks about. I
100%.
reconnected with
COVID made people like you and I, people at least listen to us now.
100%, brother. Reconnected with people, helped drive my purpose more, so that my purpose was identified as well too. Accumulated some great assets during that time as well. Plus, I was able to cut some of the deadwood that no longer serve me anymore, and that's because they're on their own path and individual paths and the rest of it. So important that we don't just focus on the negative. And again, I don't want to negative and positive. I don't know if they're the right words to utilize here, but in any change brings opportunity. Every time that there's change, there's always opportunity for growth. It's
100%. I mean, the biggest thing I would want to say to everyone, see, where I was very fortunate, and I said this to my sons recently, I said, where I feel for the modern generation a lot more is I grew up in a really great church system. And I'm talking about I saw the best of the church, Trent. I grew up in Pentecostal churches that were warriors, people who weren't afraid to speak out. The kind of people who I knew the kind of people, the ones who stood up in Florida, and as soon as the mandates came in, they laughed and they said, no one shuts down the Church of God. And people were going to prison over there until they hastily did them. One of my close friends from the church in Melbourne, I remember ringing him when I was at one of my lowest moments in COVID. Because believe you me, I sound like this great strong man. I had moments when I was just frustrated and very despondent and thought, what's the point of it all? And I remember ringing him. He'd been a really great pastor and leader in Sri Lanka during the church persecution in the last millennium. And all I rang him was said, Danny, brother, encourage me. I said to him, your church, you haven't embraced the mandates of Daniel Andrews, his brother. He said, no satanic leader like Daniel Andrews will ever shut down the Church of God. He said, church continues. No one gets vaccinated in my church who doesn't want to. Anyone who wants to get vaccinated, they can do it with our welcome, and we tell everyone not to bully them. But he said, the Church of God has lived on. He said, Daniel Andrews can he said, I'd be honored if Daniel Andrews put me in prison. And he said, because then I would be like my forefathers. But he said he will never shut down my church. And he didn't, and they never went near him. And there were people like that, but what's common is that they had a faith. I had people coming around my house who were tradies, because I'm a moderator of a group called Perth Awake on Facebook. There's about 10,000 businesses awake, and many of them came from communist countries, and they just said, we can see what's going on. They refused to do it, and many of them had strong faiths. And so the biggest thing I would say to people, it's one of the reasons we run our Awakening Within, and we send our spiritual stuff out as well, and why we run our City Awakening work about awakening people, because we see that without a good church, when I say church, I don't like that word, but like a good spiritual community, so to speak, of committed, connected people together with a strong faith. And I don't care how you frame your faith. And this is why I love Ken Wilber's Religion of Tomorrow. He said the future church or the future religion is embracing and finds a way to let people, as long as we are serving God in the way we understand it, like Steve McDonald, our mutual friend, he's a Taoist and he is a great man of God, but he does it in a Taoist sense. And then you and I have been more biblical, and I've got some of our friends and clients are Hindu Bhagavad Gitas. We've got friends who are Buddhist, and I don't really care if you're following the laws of love and the life, liberty, property rules and the freedom and that kind of stuff. So the biggest thing I would be saying to people is to focus on finding meaning in your life over through all of this, finding the
perfect.
positives, get into
Perfect.
community. When you're feeling down, yeah, look, our webinars for many people is a source of encouragement. I remember in COVID, what really helped me feel good after I felt pretty down after the whole COVID thing was the many clients who wrote to me thanking me for helping them have the courage not to get vaccinated and make their own choice. And really, that's the biggest service we can give in Global Wealth Club and what else we do to help people. And I think especially, Trent, when Mum died 6 months ago, that was a big moment for me, because when Mum died, I felt like I lived, like 3 lifetimes in 3 days, literally, because it just shocked me, because I'm like, shit, I'm next cab off the rank, I'm the oldest in my family. And I was like, what legacy am I leaving the world? I mean, am I leaving one? Or am I just some dude who comes in, says a few crazy things and gets out? And I thought, no, I want to make sure that I enjoy my life. I have quality of life myself, because for all I know, my time might be up next year. I don't know. I mean, I might get on a plane and I might be gone. And the question is, what legacy do we leave? And I think the best thing you can do, a really great pastor, Chris Garenzi, who was a great mentor for me 20 years ago, I remember he told me, the best way to deal with conflict and when there's crisis in a society, he said, when you focus your life on purpose and the kingdom of God, you don't have time for problems anymore. That's one of the things I do like about Trump, even though I don't agree with everything he necessarily does. You can see he's a man with purpose. He doesn't focus on problems. He never for a minute focused on the problems that was going on in America at the time. He focused on solving them. That was all he cared about. He didn't care about the fact he's being prosecuted. And mate, if I had 2 prosecutions happening, I'd be freaking out, and I'm pretty strong. I mean, how many prosecutions did that bloke have? And he just kept saying, witch hunt, witch hunt. I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you. And at the end of the day, he got results because at least he had the balls to push back, and wasn't
Yeah,
afraid
the
to have
spirit of
faith.
Christ too, brother. Yeah, the
Had the
spirit
spirit
of
of
Christ.
Christ, 100%. And who knows? We could put, I mean, my son inspires me when I sometimes get a bit hopeless. My oldest son, Big Willie, William, he's just the leader of Awakening Within, the soul alchemy side that we run. He says to me, he said, oh, don't you worry, Dad. He said, the reason that I'm setting up our certifications and Awakening Within, he said, we're going to bring a revolution in Australia. We're going to change the system. He goes, don't let anyone ever tell me it won't. He goes, I ain't going anywhere. He goes, yes, I'll have my plan B, but I ain't going anywhere. He goes, we're going to wake this country up. Us younger generation will sort everyone out, Dad. Don't you worry.
Well,
So,
new what we are at the moment is that there's opportunities for new leadership as well too, right? New ways to lead. I'm a big fan of Big Willie, as you know, mate, and I love his attitude with it in every way, shape, or form. And mate, I feel very much the same. I think you make some good comments. The way that I live my life, brother, is that at some point I'm going to be sitting back at those gates again, and I do everything that I do in every single day that I operate is I picture that God, whatever that is to anyone who's watching, but I'm being watched by God. And am I doing enough? It's always enough. I can't bullshit that, right? Am I really putting my
love that.
front foot forward, right? Am I really doing the best that I possibly can, not just for me, not just for those around me, but for everyone in my country? I wish I could do it for the whole world, mate, but Australia's a pretty beautiful place, and we've got a lot here that we do need to maintain. And there's a great culture here, there's great people. But every morning, mate, I always make sure that I'm giving my best foot forward to make a change, to do what it is. And I think that in itself is purpose in itself too, was it right? Like you find purpose when you do things for yourself, for others, and things that are bigger than yourself as well too. And there's nothing more satisfying. I don't have partners, don't have kids, don't have these bits and pieces because I chose a life on this journey because I'm a big believer in the reincarnation cycle, and until you get onto your mission and get your purpose, then you're going to keep on coming back. And I'm a big believer in that, mate. And I've sacrificed a lot of things in my own personal life for what I believe is for the greater good. And when I do anything for the greater the good, it's all around about doing it for God. And to me, God's high vibration energy. It's universal consciousness, but it's high vibration energy. It's not feeding the greed, the lust, the fear, the shame, the guilt. It's honoring those higher ones. And I think, mate, we can all make a big difference if we can all do that. And we've got to turn away from a few things. First one is we can't be fearful. Coming back to digital ID again, we can't be fearful around about it. We've got to navigate it the best way that you think is the best way for you. Listen to your heart. Don't listen to your head. Don't get caught up in what everyone else and everything's going through on Facebook and all the rest of it, to do what's right. And it says, don't ask for things to get easier. Ask for yourself to get stronger. And I think that's a big calling at the moment, mate. These tough times, there are opportunities for all of us to grow. All of us.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it's Tyrone used to often say, never ask God to make your life easier, ask him to make you stronger. He said that's how we grow. And I always remember that. I said, make me stronger. Help me be tougher. Help me be more ballsier. Help me get more steely in my mind. Help me to push back against evil and see change and see good come in. And yeah, Rebecca says she wants to meet William. Absolutely. Trust, I think Trent, on one of our things, we're going to have to get Big Willie and one of our GWC podcasts on this. He'll have a few things to say because he's very militant, those who know him. He loves people. He loves working with people, and he's a good, like Trent, he just likes to sit there and talk to people, and he's quite militant in the way he sees things. He was very militant during COVID. I respect him more than just about many people I know because he just shows up and shows up, shows up. And in COVID, he just refused with all of his friends, he got up and announced all of them. It says to me, I'm not going out to the pub with you anymore until these mandates are over, because he said, I refuse to be part of it or participate in it. And he refused to do it, refused to get vaccinated, refused to wear his masks. But he openly spoke to all of his friends, talked to him about him, and became a leader for all of his friends. And so many of them still to this day come to him for guidance. So he's a really good example. So I think we should get him to share one time with everyone.
Mate, absolutely. I think from what I've seen, a few names pop up. I know there's a lot of people in this webinar now, but for those that are going to be joining the I'm Awakening Thailand, Big Willie will be there. Big Willie's going to be and sharing all of his wisdom over there. But just mindful of time I'm aware that everybody else has got things to do.
Yes, we've got to finish off by saying, what's your final comments, Trent? And of course, then I'll share what, obviously we're going to suggest that those of you who do want to do something about your wealth, I think you've still got a few wealth check spots available, not many, but a few, haven't you?
Oh, there might be there's probably only a couple left there, mate, but there might be a few. I guess my words of wisdom is I'll bring some logic in first and foremost, and the logic will always be I'm not going to repeat anything that you haven't heard Warren say before, but make sure your affairs are in order. Get as many things out of your name if they're in your strawman name. Utilize trusts are obviously a great way to do it. Ensure that you own nothing, but you control everything would be the logical solution to be doing right now. And you just got to be mindful again. I'm not saying this with fear, but just be mindful again that opportunities do end. Other opportunities come about, but opportunities do end. So that'd be the first thing that I'd say. The second thing that I would say is that if you have not found that spirit within yourself yet, then do so. And if you found that spirit within yourself, you should be spending more time on developing that spirit and developing that consciousness than anything else right now. That should be your number one priority. If you're not using them, if you're not utilizing prayer, the power of manifestation, if you're not utilizing these things, then do it. Get into it. It's not woo-woo. This is the real world. Anyone that thinks that it's woo-woo, that's how much the Matrix has got a hold of you, right? It is a holy war. It is a spiritual war. And make sure that you'll play your part the best way that you can. And a really good book that I might just recommend before I finish talking here was a really good book is The Four Agreements. Is a really good, nice, simple book that can really keep people keep you in check. It's just four little things that you can do to yourself every single day. And if you honor those four things every single day, you will find peace. You will find prosperity as well too, and you absolutely will find purpose. Because now is not the time to be wearing the hat of a job or of a title. Now is the time to be your true self in your higher self and play a part in this holy war.
Oh my God, I love it. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how this went today. It's gone a more spiritual path, and but I love it. It really goes back to the mission of what we're about here. And for me, what I've learned is finances is a very important part, because the way that they stop the people stepping up is by keeping people broke. And so holding your wealth and being empowered to be strong and financially powerful is what gives you the strength to not only live a damn good life if you're going to be on earth, but also to be able to fund pushing back and do what you need to do. So
Well,
by all
money's just
means, everyone,
energy, right, was it? Money's just energy, right? So if you've got that, then you've got more energy so you can make a
100%.
impact with your
Yeah, you want to
purpose.
protect it. So I've put the link in there because it's $9.97 for Trent for the wealth tech. We get an hour and a half for Trent. It's $4.97 special at the moment until these slots go out for this year. Then next year it'll be going up. But I think there's only, as Trent said, 2 or 3 slots. I think Trent's more popular than Taylor Swift right now. But yeah, so I put the link in the chat and the promo code for you. So
I'm just going to, as well was before you go, if you don't mind, mate, just you mentioned Steve before, Steve McDonald, a mutual friend of ours. He's going to have a conversation tomorrow over at I'm Awakening around about something that we looked at last week around about those tiers of consciousness to help people understand. And I believe he's going to be make an offer for people if they want to understand exactly where they are on those tiers of consciousness. So I'm just going to put the link in there, mate. It's in the chat. And if anyone wants to join, it's 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time tomorrow, and you can just register on there for an hour if you want to hear some of Steve's wisdom that you've heard me and Warren speak about in the last couple of days.
now I love it, Trent. Just keep an eye on your inbox, everyone, the next couple of days, because Big Willie, who I just mentioned, he and I on the 15th of November are running a half-day free mystery school event to really kind of serve and give back to the community and give people some wisdom and knowledge on ways to find a meaningful life and live a life worth living. just type a why if that interests you, like on how to have a meaningful life and have a life worth living and finding purpose and how to clear your blocks, your shadows, and to get through this time. So Willie, along with me, will be sharing from an alchemy perspective, an energetic perspective. So it's going to
Yep,
be
get
free on the
on that,
15th of
everyone. Get on that
May.
one. Get
You
on
don't want
that.
to miss that. I'll be sharing a bit, and Big Willie's going to got a couple of sessions, and he's very excited. But the emails will be hitting your inbox tomorrow and Sunday. You're going to be seeing different emails come out. So make sure you come. It's going to be free. We do have, I think, a $47 VIP ticket just if people want the recordings and the transcripts and all the other things, but basically it's free. So, well, thank you for coming, everyone. And honestly, thanks again, Trent. I mean, we can thank Trent for doing this. It was his idea. I had originally other things. He was the one who came up with his 5-part series. And I'm really glad you did that, Trent. I mean, it speaks highly of me, I know, but I cannot speak more highly of this guy. He's given me hope again in the honesty of people to work with in business. He's an old-fashioned gentleman who I can shake his hand and know that he will do the right thing by me, and I don't have to think about it. And I cannot thank you enough, Trent, for your service to humanity, to GWC, and just to the people of Australia. You inspire me to keep going when every now and again I have one of my hissy fits.
We're all in it together, guys, eh? We're all in it together.
Yeah.
Thanks, Boz, and everyone. God bless you all, and we'll see you next week for another yarn.
See you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Guys.